Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
What's up, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. We are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news and discussion each and every week. And this week on the show, we're going to be talking about Kathleen Kennedy re-signing her contract for another 3 years as the head of Lucasfilm. We've got a ton of publishing and collecting news, and we just might have some time as well to get to some listener feedback. So stick around. My name is Chris, and joining me on the show is my good friend, Mr. Dominic Jones.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Ben. Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's nice to calm down a little bit after last week with Disney Plus Day. Granted, Disney Plus Day wasn't quite the bonanza.
A little calm for my taste.
Yeah, it wasn't the bonanza that everybody was expecting, but we still got a lot of good stuff. And so it's nice to calm down, have a little bit of a chance to catch up on some of the other news that we've been missing. And hey, there's still a pretty big story there about the head of Lucasfilm, sticking around for another 3 years. So lots of fun, lots of good stuff to get to. It's going to be a great show.
Heck yes. And also joining us, it's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? And a very late happy life day to everyone.
That's right.
It is the week, the day, I think it's been like 40, it's like the 42nd or 43rd life day we've had. It's great. And also 40 something years since the birth of our dear Boba Fett, who's getting his own show. Thanks. And look, I redesigned my studio specifically for this occasion. I figured, why not? So you will see here, Boba Fett shelf, right? See, I can't figure out the right there.
It's all Boba
Hey,
Fett.
there it is.
All of that is Boba Fett.
Nice.
That is all the Boba Fett merch that I have found today. I swear there's more, but I don't know. So watch this space and see. There may be more stuff showing up in future episodes, and I'll keep that up in celebration of the Book of Boba Fett. So yeah, fun times.
Nice. Well, you mentioned Life Day, Ben. Do we all want to sing the song that Carrie Fisher sings at the end of Holiday Special?
No.
I don't remember the lyrics.
You sure? So I Googled Life Day song lyrics, and shockingly, it was not the first thing that comes up. If you Google Life Day song lyrics, the first thing that comes up is a Beatles song called A Day in the Life. And I didn't fully register that when I was looking at it. And so I was looking at the opening lyrics and I'm like, boy, that doesn't sound like the song at all. I don't know how to set this to the Star Wars theme. And then I realized, oh no, it's a Beatles song. It's not Carrie Fisher's.
Here's the thing. Will we get
song.
copyright striked if we play that on the show? Because I actually like posted a little clip from the Holiday Special cartoon, as I do just about every year on our Facebook page, and it got copyright striked. I'm like, you can't actually watch this thing. Well, actually, you can watch that. That is on Disney Plus. That's why that got copyright strike. But I'm like, is there anything else I need to test it? Because you can't actually watch that thing. All the official channels are like posting Wookiees in red Snuggies. I'm like, you're not going to tell people where they can actually watch this stuff. Like, you're not going to put on Disney Plus. Come on.
It honestly feels like it might be just a matter of time until that thing is actually released. I mean, the number of references to it. I mean, it started all the way back, in 2011 or whatever with the Blu-ray release when they finally put the Boba Fett cartoon out there officially. And ever since then, the amount of Life Day references have gone up. And the fact is that the Mandalorian's gun, the main prop wielded by the main character in one of the biggest shows in the world right now is a direct lift from that special. So that's out there. And then, as was pointed out last week on the show, there's an actual clip from the holiday special in the Book of Boba Fett. Not the Book of Boba Fett, the Under the Helmet Boba Fett special documentary thing. So somebody went and found that. Somebody who works for Disney or Lucasfilm or whatever production company they hired to make that thing.
Quality. It looks great.
Yeah. Somebody was given access to the archives and they found the original version, so they have it. So it could be released. It exists somewhere on a VHS or a thumb drive or something. It's there. So I don't know. George obviously doesn't really want it out there. He did his best to make sure it was never seen again after that first airing. And
he tried so hard to distance himself in that documentary. He's like, "Oh, they did that. I had nothing to do with that."
But he acknowledged it. That's the thing. He acknowledged it. And I think if it's presented as like, as long as it's not presented as like the missing chapter in George Lucas's Star Wars, I think maybe they could convince him, hey, come on, let's put it out there. It'll be fun. It'll be funny. It'll be all around good times. And George, maybe George, in his retirement will, have a little bit more of a sense of humor about these things and be willing to laugh at himself. And
someone was passing around the old quote, I think it's from a couple years ago, where Jon Favreau was like, "Yeah, I want to do a holiday special." I'm like, man, I forgot all about that. Give Favreau the keys to do that. Like, come on, how amazing! Like, we've already got a Lego holiday special. Why not a full-on holiday special?
I mean, if you go on Disney Plus now and on the opening page, if you scroll through those banners they have at the top, one of the things, the Star Wars thing they have up there now is the Lego holiday special, because we're in that we're in that space. So I don't know, it's just a matter of time, but they should bring back the song, which we're definitely not going to sing. We're not going to sing it. Chris, just start the plugs. We're not going to sing it.
No, definitely not.
That's all I got.
We celebrate a day of peace. A day of harmony.
Oh my God, we're losing listeners. The falling down. Our subscriber count's going down like crazy already.
A day of joy we all can share together joyously. Wow, they really did not try with these lyrics. A day of joy that we can all share together joyously. I'm really happy about this happy day we're having happily. Hell are these lyrics?
Wow.
Dang.
You can tell they definitely put as much thought into the song as they did the rest of the special. I just want to know what
Carrie Fisher's reaction was when she was handed that script.
For like, really?
I just love like the story. It sounds like it's true. Who knows if it's true? But like the fact that like Carrie Fisher made George Lucas give her a copy of the holiday special so she could play it at her house when she had parties to get people to leave at the end of the night. Like, you just turn it on.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Plugs. Let's get to the plugs.
Okay, on that note,
a day that takes us through the darkness, a day that leads us into might. I've lost the tune. I'm sorry.
So now I was going to say before that maybe we'll sing it after we get to 1,000 subscribers, but I think we need to reverse that and say we'll stop singing when we get to 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah, this is the
maybe that'll motivate people to subscribe faster if we won't stop until we get there.
The promise.
We're like 18 subscribers away. We're so close. If you have not watched the show on YouTube yet, definitely check it out. You want to see Dominic's mouth moving when those sounds.
This will motivate you to steal your friends and your parents' phones and use their YouTube to subscribe to us. That's your incentive.
So go over to YouTube, search for Star Wars Underworld, scroll past the Star Wars Underworld test footage. All our stuff will be right after that, taking up the whole page or channel and everything. We're also part of a greater podcast network, the Culture Slate Podcast Network, which has helped us move to video. So make sure you check out all the other great shows on that network. Star Wars Culture has a new show up from yesterday where they were standing Kathleen Kennedy for about an hour. It was awesome. So make sure you check that out. We also got the rollout on Fridays, and Chatter Squadron will be coming back in the new year. So make sure you sub to them so you don't miss any new content. I don't think this is the week. Is this the week where we're doing the big Patreon reveal, or do we have to put it off another week? Dominic.
This would have been the week to do it.
I forgot again.
If I also hadn't forgotten until about 10 minutes ago.
So we'll tease it again for the fourth time. We've got some new stuff going up on patreon.com/theswu.
And I'll tell you, one person has already signed up for it.
Ooh.
You could be the second. You could be the second.
Do we want to give this person a shout out, or do we not know their name?
It's Jesse Bennett.
Jesse.
Oh.
Awesome. Shout out to Jesse, longtime supporter of the Star Wars Underworld.
Being a real one.
For getting some special stuff. That's awesome. I'm excited. Make sure you take photos when you get it. Send it to us. It'd be awesome. Yeah, check that out. Patreon.com/theswu. That's where all of our new rewards are. And one of these days we'll have all of the photos of them up so we can actually talk about it on our stream as well. But just head over to patreon.com/theswu. And that's also where you can get the pre-show for $1. Every level gets the pre-show. We talked about No Way Home and that very fascinating trailer. We had a very long discussion about that and our feelings about this movie and our fears about this movie. And very, very, very interesting conversation. So you find all that at patreon.com/theswu. We're getting to some listener feedback later in the show. And the way that you send that in is by emailing us at our 10-year-old email, swunderworld@gmail.com. That's right. We still have it. It hasn't been hacked. It still exists. And that's where you can email us, swunderworld@gmail.com. If you're listening on a podcast app, make sure that you leave a review. If the app lets you do that, that would be freaking awesome. And then if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. All right, that's all the plugs.
That's the plugs. All right, well then let's get into the news. And we begin this week with the top story. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy has re-upped her contract for 3 more years as head of Lucasfilm. The story comes from the writer Matthew Baloney, who wrote for the Puck newsletter. This is what he says. Kennedy has a lot of good things happening at Lucasfilm, and I'm told she recently re-upped her deal for another 3 years. Now, of course, her last deal was also 3 years. It was signed in 2018, sort of on the back of Solo, and brought us to, where we are now. So Kathleen Kennedy is back for another 3 years. Ben, we'll throw it over to you first. What is your reaction to this news?
Yeah, it just feels like the biggest non-news. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, Kathleen Kennedy not fired for the 10th time in a row. That's basically where we're at. But it is, we've been, this whole thing about her contract has been talked about a couple times in the past. And, she has been, believe it or not, it feels like she just got there, even though she was on board at Lucasfilm before George Lucas left, before Disney took over. Like, she's been there a long time. So it's not really out of the realm of possibilities. Like, I don't know how long, studio presence usually stick around, but it's possible she may want to, get out and let someone else take control. You've got people like, I don't know, Doug Chang, I think is the VP. He may step up into that role. I don't know. But apparently not. Apparently she's sticking with it, and I'm all for it. Yeah. Yes. I get it. Okay. There's room for nuanced opinions about Kathleen Kennedy. I'm not just picking on you guys that just are making up stuff about her being fired. Okay. There is if you don't enjoy what's going on in Star Wars right now, I get it, whatever. And I also understand there's a lot of drama going on right now. There's all the stuff about Rogue Squadron coming up, and you're like, what's actually happening? Is Lucasfilm really the best? Are they doing the best they can with the film side of things? We know they're killing it with the TV side of things, but what's going on with the movies? And being Kathleen Kennedy, being the film producer that she is, the legendary film producer, it makes sense that that's her realm of things. So that's a whole other story. But I am glad that she's sticking around, and she's going to be around for a little while longer. I mean, she's quite frankly overqualified for the job. She's got her IMDb just keeps going and going and going. And I watched E.T. the other day for the first time in a very long time. And, her name's all over the credits. That was one of her first one. Wow, she's been doing this for so long. I'm glad she's gonna keep doing it and making Star Wars. And obviously they got the Willow series coming out. They're working on Shadow and Bone, so there's not just Star Wars stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on in Lucasfilm, and she's gonna keep going.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what about you? What's your reaction to this?
See, it's really funny because Ben's just like, oh, this is like the biggest non-news story ever. And then I'm here and I'm just like, suck it, haters. Like, oh my gosh. Like these pervasive rumors on the internet, it's like the flat earthers of the Star Wars fandom is this concept that Kennedy has ruined Star Wars and that she's always like 1 month away from being replaced or fired or disgraced, and it just keeps popping up, and it's been popping up for years now, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. These always come from the worst sources possible, yet people still peddle this information, and it just makes no business sense. Like it's just amazing to me that it's something that so many people talk about, that she's a failure. Like, it makes no sense. She's one of the most, if not the most successful producer in the history of the planet. Like, she's the Michael Jordan of producers. Like, Michael Jordan, like, was allowed to just go on after he retired, was allowed to come back and just play and kind of suck because he was so good. And he was still better than everybody else. Like, just when he was like 50, he was like, just I'm going to lace up today. Like, Kathleen Kennedy will be allowed to do whatever she wants to do for forever. No one has her number. No one's going to is going to fire her. She's in charge. She makes the rules. And the reason why is because no one's had the success that she has. And I'm going to talk about the success outside Star Wars, but just as a tiny little microcosm, if you look at the things that have happened with Star Wars since Kathleen Kennedy has come on board, we've had multiple billion-dollar movies that are some of the highest grossing films of all time. People, there's this whole story about how like the sequels underperformed expectations and they were failures. Like, no, like the sequels made more money than the prequels adjusted for inflation. Kathleen Kennedy did a better job selling the sequels than George Lucas himself did selling the prequels, even if you adjust for inflation. So, yeah, maybe you can pull out some rando on the internet who was like, oh, my gosh, The Last Jedi is going to make $2 billion, and then say, like, oh, it didn't make $2 billion, so it's a failure. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, it made more money than Attack of the Clones. The Rise of Skywalker, I think, made more money than Revenge of the Sith, adjusted for inflation. So that's dumb. Solo is the only thing that was a failure, and we all know why that happened, because they put it out at a time where there was,
and it made pretty good money. And just they had to make it twice.
Yeah, exactly. But and then that's not even talking about Rogue One. That's not even talking about the movie that some people say is better than like Return of the Jedi. Like, a lot of people put Rogue One as like one of their top few Star Wars films, and forget about the whole film. That scene with Darth Vader, the hallway scene, is one of the best scenes ever in the history of Star Wars. Like, that is amazing. It's quintessential Star Wars at its peak. It's absolutely amazing. So there's that in the film universe. And then you have bringing the Clone Wars back and having it be better than you could have ever anticipated it being under Lucas. Like, they added even more budget to that thing and made it even more cinematic and even better. And they listened to the fans. And so that you got to give her credit for that, because she had to sign off on it at the very least. If not, who knows, that might have even been her idea. And then that's not even talking about this guy. If you're watching on video, I'm pointing to Grogu. I think Grogu's actually like here in the studio on another cam. Yeah, there he is. There he's over there. He's over there. I'm over here today. Now I don't know which one to switch back to. Yes, I got the right one. That could have been really sketchy. I don't know what the other cameras pointed at. Yeah, Grogu, the Mandalorian, the thing that has brought Star Wars to another level. Like I feel like with the Mandalorian Grogu, Star Wars is more popular than it has ever been. Like, maybe it isn't as popular as it was in 1977. I wasn't alive then. I can't compare it. But thinking back to like 1999 and the Phantom Menace and the hype for that, thinking about the hype behind The Force Awakens, like the Mando hype, the Grogu hype, it's just as pervasive in pop culture as Star Wars has ever been. And that's under Kennedy. And now we're about to enter into this renaissance where there's like 10 shows that we're going to be getting, including bringing Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan Kenobi, which people have clamored for long before Kennedy even had anything to do with Lucasfilm. So like, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff which makes this announcement just make sense. And also I'm just so glad that it's out there and it's said that, you know, she has a contract for 3 years, so that hopefully for at least 3 years some of these people will like shut up about this. But you know, again, if you're not sold, if you hate Star Wars, if you think Star Wars sucks, just remember that Kathleen Kennedy's the reason why we got E.T., Poltergeist, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Gremlins, The Goonies, Back to the Future, The Color Purple. Like literally, it would probably take me 10 minutes if I listed every household known film that she has produced or executive produced or associate produced for the past like 50 years. Like, again, she's the Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Wayne Gretzky of film. Like, come on, people. All right, that's I'll let someone else talk.
Boom.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have hit on, I think, the main point that comes up with any story that involves her, which is that there is a movement of people that have just decided that she is everything that's wrong with Star Wars and that she represents everything that they don't like about Star Wars, when really it has less to do with Star Wars and more to do with the culture as a whole shifting. And it's less about anything specific with Star Wars and more about the larger culture wars that are happening that at Star Wars.
Yeah,
just
if you look at like what's going on in Star Wars fandom and when it started and like what was going on in the real world, there's a direct correlation there.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's unfortunate that this always comes up, because I do feel like there's a nuanced conversation to be had about her time at running Star Wars. But I think the ultimate conclusion is that, could it have been better? Sure. But has it been spectacular in and of itself? Yeah, it's been pretty great. You know, I was thinking, like, you know, there's sort of, if you want, you can lay out the last, what are we at now? 7 years of Star Wars, you know, two separate ways. You can do an all positive version where you point out that, you know, 4 of the 5 movies made over $1 billion, 3 of which were, you know, the highest grossing movie of the year. You know, there's been the TV show, the first TV show that comes out is nominated for some of the biggest awards. It becomes this pop culture phenomenon. You mentioned all the stuff with Baby Yoda and Grogu and everything like that. It's been terrific. I think it's also fair to bring up the fact that it feels like every single Star Wars movie just about has had a director be changed or fired, or it almost feels like as many people have been hired to direct a Star Wars movie and then let go for one reason or another, or had their project taken away from them, as have actually finished their Star Wars movie. You know, we could go through the list. There's Josh Trank. It's Gareth Edwards. Yes, he's still credited as the director of Rogue One, but let's be real, Tony Gilroy directed about 30 to 40% of that thing. Phil Lord and Chris Miller, Colin Trevorrow, Stephen Daldry was making the Obi-Wan movie. James Mangold was making a Boba Fett movie. Those two were rumored, at least they weren't announced. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who stepped aside. Maybe we can add Patty Jenkins to that list. That's a possibility.
Point, given all that previous information you just gave, you can't, like, I have as I said last week, pretty positive outlook on Patty Jenkins. I feel like they're doing the right thing with that. There's some other rumors that came out this week. They're like, I'm not sure what to take of those, whatever. But I can't blame anyone for looking at the situation going like, oh, here we go again. They're going to fire Patty Jenkins and do that. Like, I get it. Like, I don't have that opinion, but I get after all this, people be so cynical about it because we have been through so much, losing many directors and having a lot of behind the scenes drama.
And you could even add, Rian Johnson to that list, even though, yes, he made The Last Jedi, but his trilogy, I mean, nobody's said that it's been shelved, but we also all have eyes and can see the fact that nothing has been said about that movie since it was announced. There's
if we all would have guessed, it would be like, oh yeah, it'd probably come out in about 2021. That's the first movie, and like here we are.
Yeah, and that doesn't even bring up the proposed spin-offs to Solo and all that stuff. So there have been issues, and I think there are questions, and when somebody else eventually does take over, because I imagine at some point Kathleen Kennedy is going to want to retire. There's going to be questions about, is it her style or is it something to do with Star Wars as a whole? The pressure that comes with making Star Wars movies that results in this sort of insane level of turnover. Like that doesn't, the number of names we just listed off versus the number of movies that have come out, that doesn't happen with other franchises, or if it does, we talk about them as troubled franchises. And at the same time, but what Star Wars has going for it at the same time is, as there's this track of trouble, but there's also this track of success with solid movies. Some of them being really great, some of them being a little underwhelming, but most of them fitting nicely in the very enjoyable, really good, solid, entertaining middle. And massive success at the box office and massive success in merchandising and other things. So I think there's sort of two tracks here, and ultimately I think the good outweighs the bad, and I think the good outweighs the bad quite convincingly. But when the book is written on, Star Wars in the immediate post Disney buyout, the first 10 years of Star Wars post Disney buyout, which we're coming up on, we're going to finally be able to have that conversation we were putting off for years and years and years about how this thing's been run. Will it, it will not be a flawless execution. There'll be a lot of questionable decisions and questionable things that happened along the way that are worth looking at. So I as a general, I think this is the right decision. I think, especially since she's gotten the ball rolling on so many projects, I think she should be allowed to see them through with everything that's coming up on Disney Plus. But I'm also not convinced that everything that has happened in this last little while has been gold. So I feel like I'm happy with this news. I'm excited about this news. I'm excited to see what she does. I think she's earned it. But at the same time, I'm still a little wary of everything. Like I'm in the space of, until I see it on screen, I don't believe it's happening with all of this stuff, because everything always seems to be delayed or canceled. Or let's not forget, Andor was almost canceled. They had to bring in Tony Gilroy again to save that thing. So there's
the crawl on Rogue Squadron is going to be going up, and you're going to be like, oh, okay, now it's happening.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, like, all right,
relax.
fine. All right, here we go.
Make her relax. Okay.
Yeah, make her relax. Make her relax. Honestly, when the trailer comes out, that's when I'll be fine. But yeah, that's so all I'm saying is I think there's a nuance here. It hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been terrible. It certainly, I think, falls more into the good lane than the bad. But there's nuance here.
So I think this is an incredibly ironic situation, because I feel like, a lot of the negativity amongst the fan base towards Kathleen Kennedy is that, she doesn't understand Star Wars. She puts out things that fans don't like, all this stuff. But I think it's hilarious, because I think that most of the things that Star Wars has done wrong over the last decade, and that's been related to her, is kind of in the camp of listening to the fans too much and being too worried about what the fans think.
I agree.
And so it's like really ironic. I think if Kathleen Kennedy didn't give a crap about fans, Star Wars would be in a better spot right now than it is. I think that the creative people need to be allowed to be creative, and they shouldn't have a producer or story group or Bob Iger, whoever it is, whispering in their ear saying, yeah, but will the fans like that? Like, because you can tell that's happened. Like, you can tell by some of these films and the way that the content in them, that those conversations have happened, and that the fans are a little bit in the heads of some of the writers and directors. And perhaps maybe one of the reasons why we've had so much turnover is people in the production side, the office side, have looked at some of the stuff and said, okay, yeah, this is good, but I don't know if it's gonna fly with the fans. Like, I don't know if the fans are gonna like, a single cam Star Wars comedy. I'm sure it would have been good. And I think that Kathleen Kennedy and whoever else are making those decisions and a part of that. I think they're learning. I think they're getting better at this. I think Star Wars Vision shows that they're willing to let things go a little bit more, and that's a really good sign. And I think with all these different Disney Plus shows coming out, I think that we're going to have more variance and what creatives are going to do. And maybe with Taika Waititi's film, whenever, if ever that comes, same thing. He seems to be allowed to do what he wants with it. So I think that they've learned from the mistakes, but ironically, I think the mistakes are too much fan service, being too worried about the fans and not letting the original people just go with their original idea and see it through.
And let's not forget that, they say Kathleen Kennedy doesn't understand the fans, and they don't that she doesn't understand Star Wars. That's the same thing they were saying about George Lucas. Everybody's forgotten that now that he's out of the picture. But I came across a book from it was a collection of articles of like op-eds that had been written in a newspaper. It was from like 2007 to 2011 or something, and in it they talked about Star Wars. Star Wars comes up in it, and there was one that was written about it, and it was all about how George Lucas didn't understand what was made his movie so great, and how the prequels had stomped all over the legacy of the original trilogy. All the stuff they say now about the sequels, it's the thing that, and I'm sure when they make the sequels down the line, people will say that about how those episodes 10, 11, 12 don't understand what makes Star Wars, what makes greatness, the same way The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker did. Like, that's obviously where we're heading. What George did, like you said, what George did was he didn't listen to the fans. He made the movies he wanted to make. And that's what, like you were saying, Chris, the new filmmakers need to have the freedom to do. And I do think that when she stepped into the role, that Kathleen Kennedy had every intention of allowing that to happen. I think that's why the first filmmakers hired after J.J. Abrams were Josh Trank, Gareth Edwards, and Rian Johnson. And Phil Lord and Chris Miller and Colin Trevorrow. Like, these were not necessarily the biggest people. I think Trevorrow kind of fit more into the Abrams camp because he did the Jurassic stuff. But, Edwards, Lord and Miller, Trank, Johnson, like all of those guys were they seemed like they were sort of risky, out there choices, different. They were going to have different personal, unique takes on Star Wars. And somewhere along the line, something shifted. And maybe that was the success of The Force Awakens got to everybody's mind. Maybe, and I'm not even necessarily saying it was her. It might have been Bob Iger telling her, "You have to do this. I am your boss." So you wound up with situations where, it feels like they're just going out there trying to please the fans, quote unquote, whatever that means. And as a result, they're not letting Star Wars shine the way it originally did, where you had a vision behind the story that was, it had a point of view, it had a message, it had something unique that it was trying to do, and that's where we have to get to. And I think on the TV side, we're seeing that a little bit. And Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni are doing that pretty well with Mando, and looks like they'll do it again with Book of Boba. But we're on the film side, it does feel a little paint by numbers, especially with the last two films.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's because that just Star Wars is held to a higher standard. The people who are working on Star Wars are held to a higher standard than people working on other things.
Yeah.
Because everybody at Lucasfilm is aware, and again, this is the fans' fault, that if they screw up, it's going to have implications for a while. You know, they have a movie that just goes really, really south. You know, they might sell less tickets for the next one, and you know, they're not at the point yet. And I will desperately want them to get to the point where Marvel's at, where Marvel can just do whatever they want. And if a movie like, you know, it's not like the Eternals comes out and people are like, oh, that's like a okay movie, it's not that great. Now I'm not going to see Spider-Man. Of course people are going to see Spider-Man regardless of what they think about Shang-Chi or the Eternals or Black Widow or anything else that's come out this year. Everybody's still hyped. Like, you still want to, I want Lucasfilm to get to a point where they can experiment, they can have different spin-off things, and if something just doesn't work for a lot of people, it's fine. People are still hyped for the thing that they are really, really into. But Star Wars is not there yet. It's still very touchy. They've only put out several films, and again, I think things are held to a higher standard. So when you have, you know, Colin Trevorrow and his writer, was that Chris Terrio?
No, Derek Connolly.
Derek Connolly, yeah. When they have them kind of saying like, oh, we don't know exactly what to do about having Carrie Fisher have less of a role in this, and we're not sure what to do about this, you know, instead of like giving them like, okay, let's just push this movie back a year and you guys figure it out. It's like, no, we got to have a good idea about how to handle this. If you can't figure that out, let's bring somebody else in. Let's bring JJ back and let's fix this thing. And then like, you know, with Josh Trank, like Josh Trank is like, you know, acting like a fool while he's filming Fantastic Four. And, you know, they still let him finish Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four, I didn't even see it. I don't know if it was good. I don't think it was.
No, not good.
But, you know, if they had treated, you know, Fantastic Four with the same kid gloves that they treat Star Wars, there's no way he would have been able to finish that movie. They would have brought in, you know, somebody to fix that. But no, they just allowed it to die because it's like, who cares? If a Fantastic Four sucks, it's not going to affect anything else. They're just going to put out another whatever movie that studio puts out. But you can't do that with Star Wars. So you had to deal with that situation. And then again, the most notable situation of perhaps creative differences with Gareth Edwards' version of Rogue One not being up to whatever standards that be, and bringing in Tony Gilroy for that. Like, I don't care about that situation because I think we're all in agreement that it did work and was a good decision and made the film better. So that was a good decision. You can't knock that. Really, the only thing that's questionable at all is what happened with Solo. That's the only thing that's questionable. We don't know what the trajectory of that film would have been if they hadn't brought Ron Howard in to redo it. So there's only one. I only count one thing that I see as a potential misstep. I think that the other decisions that were made are pretty much similar decisions that I would make in that situation.
There's just so much armchair quarterbacking. And okay, first of all, hey, armchair quarterback here. I do this every week to you guys.
Yeah.
You know, trying to figure this stuff out because we only have a limited amount of information. We have no freaking idea what is going on behind the scenes. We get a little tiny bit of information. We have no idea what happened between Gareth Edwards and Lucasfilm and Rogue One and whatever. I just remember reading the trades and hearing about the reshoots going like, oh my God, Rogue One's ruined. This movie is going to be crap because they've ruined it because it's all these reshoots and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, that was the whole thing, that drama. And that movie turned out to be great. And then, you know, there is so much like in comment sections, whether you got a mic or you're typing away on your keyboard in a YouTube comment section, you're trying to figure this out. And people try to, as you're saying earlier, like, you know, people talk about, oh, they don't understand Star Wars. That's the go-to advice of they just don't understand it like I do. I understand Star Wars a lot. Me, I am a very smart person. I understand Star Wars a lot. Kathleen Kennedy, she doesn't understand anything. And, you know, there's so many more moving pieces. And I think there was a perfect example is like what was going on, I think, with Marvel in the early years. Recently, a book came out. And I don't know who made this book. I don't know if it was officially licensed or whatever. Like, it kind of lays out, like, all the drama that was going on behind the scenes the first 10 years of Marvel. And the fact that, like, there was, like, some people like Ike Perlmutter, who was a very bad dude. Look him up. And then there's other stuff going on. And then Kevin Feige almost walked away because like there was stuff going on, and it was out of his hands basically at that point, and he was tired of it. And there was so many interference with the studio, and after that, it kind of things, and it was happening during the production of Civil War. And you can kind of see a correlation with like some of the stuff that was going on in the movies kind of like makes sense when you read about the subtext of like the behind the scenes drama. And I think a lot of this stuff could be cleared up if we just knew the truth. We don't. And, Kathleen Kennedy, she's the president. She is ultimately responsible for what's going on. And I think there's no disputing that. So like if it's happened on her watch, yes, it's her responsibility, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's her fault if something happened. We don't know what's going on. I'm not saying it's not her fault. I'm not saying that, maybe she's just hard to work with as a director or whatever. Like, I don't get it. But ultimately, we won't know for a while. Hopefully the trend of like losing directors will cease. Hopefully this is just, as it says with Patty Jenkins, just something that's going on. They need rewrites and need more time. That makes sense. But I wouldn't be shocked at this point to hear that there's more drama, that there's more creative differences, the age-old expression. So it's ultimately like, we love to pretend we know everything, especially here on the interwebs, but we don't, unfortunately.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think, to me, I think the way back to the theaters for Star Wars might not be Rogue Squadron. It might not be an Old Republic movie. It might not be anything. It might need to be whatever the climactic event for the Mandoverse is. Where instead of doing
people in theaters,
a 6 or 8 part series on Disney Plus, you do a trilogy of movies that concludes the Din Djarin, Ahsoka Tano, whoever's the Star of Rangers of the New Republic, and Grand Admiral Thrawn story is. I think that might be the way back, because Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have I think built up the clout to be able to make the movie they want to make. And they've done that with the success of their shows. The fact that they were given 3 spin-offs from The Mandalorian, I think speaks to that. And I think that might be a way to kind of hit reset on the Star Wars films, and give them kind of a clean slate, so that the last 2 movies weren't Solo and The Rise of Skywalker, one of which was a financial disappointment, it was financial failure, and the other one was fairly divisive, and you throw in Last Jedi on that as well, also a divisive movie. So you've had three kind of odd releases with those movies, and that's what you then have to reset from. And Rogue Squadron, is or would have been a very tough challenge for that movie to do that. And so I think you continue the story from Disney Plus on the big screen. People are already invested in those characters. They're already invested in that story. So they'll be willing to go to the theater, willing to go and see how that story concludes. And you look at the movies that are big successes these days, more and more they're becoming event movies. Whether that's Avengers movies or Justice League movies or things like that. Because what's the most anticipated movie on the upcoming slate right now? If you had to look at the next, let's even say 2 years, what's the most anticipated movie? It comes out next month. It's that Spider-Man movie that we were talking about in the pre-show. That is the most anticipated thing in the world right now. Spider-Man No Way Home. And it's an event movie. It's because it's bringing in the characters from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, and it's bringing in the ones from the Andrew Garfield movies, and it's bringing them in from the other Marvel movies, and maybe they'll be bringing them in from the Sony Spider-Man movies. Like it's bringing in everybody, and it's all coming together in this movie, and people are mad hyped for it. And I understand why. I'm feeling it too. Like, genuinely, I can't believe it's only a month away. Like, it's really, really exciting. And so I think you do that. How can Star Wars do that right away? Like, how can that do that as quickly as possible? Make an event. You say, this is the conclusion to the Mandalorian story in theaters, December 2024 or 2025. Let's go. Here we are. It's time.
I agree completely with that. And, of course, if I was given the role as president of Lucasfilm back in 2012, of course I wouldn't have batted an eye at Dave Filoni doing the sequels. Like, to me, that would have been the natural choice. I understand that, that would have been a lot of pressure for someone like him to come from animated television with only a few shows under his belt and then have control over, the three of the biggest movies in film history. Like, I understand why, he wasn't given that position and why instead he was given Rebels and various other animated projects. And then finally, more recently, a live action short kind of series. But I hope, though, based on what I would have done in 2012, that this does happen, because I think when Dave Filoni's given the full budget and the full clearance creatively to do what he wants, it rarely disappoints anyone. Except those people that are disappointed by everything. And then that's just, my final take on, the reaction to Kennedy is like, we know that the reason why people are critical of Kennedy typically has nothing to do with Kennedy. They'd be critical of whoever's in charge because they just like doing that. Because as we've alluded to before, and I'll say it more fully, there's always a public enemy number one in Star Wars fandom. There always has been. Like in the prequels, George Lucas was public enemy number one for ruining everybody's childhood. And then during the Clone Wars, Dave Filoni was public enemy number one. That's right. Currently, the beloved Dave Filoni that everybody says should take over Star Wars used to be public enemy number one for destroying the expanded universe.
People understand now, right now, people that love Dave Filoni, they don't realize what it was like back in like 2010.
Yeah.
Dave Filoni was like, compared to Satan, like he was you Googled Dave Filoni, you saw like awful pictures like photoshopped of him, like it was bad.
I've told this story before, I will tell it again. I was at Star Wars Celebration 5 in 2010, and I overheard a conversation on the show floor between two people, and the conversation went like this. Person one said, Dave Filoni. The other person said, the man who is single-handedly ruining Star Wars.
Yep.
He is the savior for all who look now. And back in the day, people were saying he was as Ben said, Satan incarnate for overwriting the works of Karen Travis.
2008, if in 2009, like George Lucas was like, I'm leaving, and I'm leaving Dave Filoni in charge. The Star Wars fans would have died in droves from strokes. They would have just had a meltdown. It would have been bad.
Yeah.
And so this is how we know that whenever Kathleen Kennedy does retire and Kevin Feige, Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, my guess is Carrie Beck, because an actual office person who's not a creative.
My guess is Michelle Rejwan.
Or Michelle Rejwan. Yeah, someone like that. When they take over, they're going to become public number one. They're going to inherit that crown. Yeah. And that's just how it's going to work. And it has nothing to do with reality. It's just people making an identity off of hating popular things.
Yep. Exactly. By the way, I took a little shot at Karen Travis there. I just want to say, I loved her take on Star Wars. I loved her books. They were good. And they were really interesting. They were good stuff. Good characters too. But, and it's a shame that it became like a Filoni versus Karen Travis thing back in the day, because not that the two of them were necessarily fighting, but their fans were, and that's a shame because they were both doing interesting stuff.
Yeah, you really have to go searching for Dave Filoni hate now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go into a Legends group where his name is still Mud.
Anyway, that's what's going on with Kathleen Kennedy. She's back for at least 3 more years.
Whether you like it or not, we've got her for 3 more years.
We got her for 3 more years,
and probably 3 more after that.
And genuinely, I'm excited to see what she does. I'm excited. I think what she's established for what is on the docket for the television side of things, starting with Book of Boba, moving on to Kenobi, moving on to Andor, and more seasons of Mando, and then getting into Ahsoka and the Acolyte, and hopefully Rangers of the New Republic and Lando as well. I think there's really, really exciting, interesting things that are going on there, and I'm excited for that. I hope they can get the cinematic side sorted out. as we talked about last week, you know, the experience of going and seeing a new Star Wars movie is unparalleled. It's something I miss dearly and hope we get to do again. But you know, if we have to wait for it, so be it. As long as it's worthwhile when we go back. They should take their time to figure it out. And like I said, make the return an event. Make it the finale to the Mandoverse. I think that would be a lot of fun, and would allow them to skip all of the struggles of getting a new cinematic universe or corner of their cinematic universe up and running to do an event kind of thing, and just let them jump right to the event, because they'll have done all the work on the TV side of things, where surprisingly, granted we've only really had one or two projects, but it's surprisingly things seem to be running a lot smoother and there seems to be less pressure. So anyways, 3 more years of Kathleen Kennedy. Love it or hate it, I think it's pretty exciting.
Agreed.
All right, next up, this isn't really a story, it's just kind of a fun thing.
No, this is big news. All right. I contend this is some of the biggest news, perhaps the biggest news we're going to talk about, maybe physically the biggest news
You're right,
of
yes.
the whole week.
Yes, you're right, Ben. Physically, this is the biggest story, maybe of the whole year when it comes to Star Wars. It's the Grogu balloon that will fly in the Macy's Day Parade. Thanksgiving Day Parade. I guess so. That's next week. Here it is if you're watching on video. It's a Funko Pop version of Grogu, and he's chasing the little ball thing.
Can't wait till this goes on sale. I just don't know where I'm going to put it.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, you do have that giant Black Series TIE fighter, so it would be kind of par for the course for you to buy this. Maybe we could put it on the roof of the restaurant.
I was going to say, you put it on the roof of the restaurant and just be prepared for it to float to Celebration next year.
It'll just be like one of those weird roadside attractions, you know, like, here, come see this giant Grogu. Very on brand. But I love the fact that this is apparently the first ever Star Wars balloon at a Macy's parade, which kind of blows my mind.
That's shocking. Are you sure?
This is what I've heard. And I've never seen a photo of like a Star Wars balloon at a Macy's parade.
Now that I think about
it must be true, right? I mean, so people in the comments, like, fact check this, all right?
This is such an American thing that is happening right now. There's never been a bigger Star Wars balloon in the parade. What? What?
Look, you're laughing, but I'm gonna have to wake up at 8 a.m. to watch this parade for the first time since was 8 years old.
Oh my gosh, I live on the West Coast. I'm gonna have to get up at like 4 a.m.
But I can't miss this. I can't miss it.
I'm just not gonna go to bed that night.
It's a Funko Pop Grogu. That's like double for me. Like,
I'll watch the highlights on YouTube. I think I'll wake up that day. I'll listen to the Green Day song Macy's Day Parade, and then I'll get on, and then I'll watch the highlights of this, and then I'll get on with my day. That's what I think I will do as not an American. All right. Next story. Something that makes sense. The cover for the new book, Star Wars Brotherhood, which is the Anakin Obi-Wan novel coming out in May 2022 by Mike Chen. There it is if you're watching on the screen. No, that's not a cover from 2003. That is a cover from 2021. That is like, it reminds me a little bit of the Master and Apprentice cover from, we should get into, make sure we're in the picture. Chris and I can't, Ben can't.
You can see one of Ben's eyes.
Yeah. No, Ben, stay in that exact spot you were just in for the entirety of this story. Yeah.
yeah, there we are.
Yeah. Stay there. Just don't move. No, stay. Stay.
One of my eyes.
This doesn't make sense if you're just listening to it. I'm sorry. But this cover, what I'm saying is,
I'm gonna gesture wildly so you can see me.
With the prequel era novels, they seem to have gone with prequel era covers, which, I mean, like, the stories are set during the time frame of episodes 1 to 3, and they're making covers that look like they would have come out in 1999 to 2005. Like, if you showed me this cover without knowing that this is a new book coming out next year, I would have thought, oh, right, that must have been part of that Clone Wars initiative they did back in 2003. But instead, it's a new book. I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's definitely a throwback to those old, like, where they would even splice prequel on-screen characters onto with new heads for make new characters on the book covers, because it was not everyone was a character from the movie. But yeah, it's definitely throwback to those old photoshops, which I have a lot of nostalgia for. So this looks like a good cover.
Yeah, it looks good, and I'm excited for this book. Kind of a pre-Clone Wars Anakin and Obi-Wan story. Pre the Clone Wars, the cartoon, post Attack of the Clones.
It's actually going to probably deal with some stuff that I wish we had gotten in the Clone Wars, because I was always we had. There was something in the comics where Anakin got his scar, stuff like that. I'm like, oh, Clone Wars, perfect opportunity to show Anakin how he got his scar and all this kind of stuff, and none of that's in things. Grievous coughs already. We don't get an explanation for that. Anakin has a scar. All this stuff they could have explained, they didn't.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting, right? Because it's before the Clone Wars, but after Attack of the Clones, and Clone Wars, the Anakin Obi-Wan relationship in Attack of the Clones is very tense. It's very spicy. They don't really get along super well. And then in Clone Wars, they're best buddies. And we know under the surface, and this comes out in later seasons, that there are issues. They don't fully trust each other. But it seems like we're seeing the relationship that was alluded to when Obi-Wan thought back on his friendship with Anakin in A New Hope. So there's this little gap between that relationship in Attack of the Clones and that relationship in the Clone Wars movie, or was it Cat and Mouse, or whatever the very first episode chronologically is.
I believe so.
And so I think this book could tell a really interesting story. I'm not even going to say fill a gap, because I don't like saying that. I don't like saying this story is filling a gap. It's telling a story that just happens to be set inside this gap in the timeline.
Oh, look at this filler book.
Yeah. I don't want to say the F word. But it's it could tell this story that is kind of missing, of Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship evolving from master and apprentice to equals, essentially. And that's an interesting story. I feel like there's a lot of character stuff you could get into there as they deal with their shifting relationship. And I feel like a novel is a really good medium for that story. Because you can really get in their heads in a novel and see what they're thinking and read what they're thinking. So I'm excited for this. I'm excited to see what Mike Chen has in store with Star Wars Brotherhood on May 10th, 2022. More publishing news. This is very exciting for old school Star Wars comics fans. Dark Horse Comics is back. They're returning to Star Wars in 2022. This is from StarWars.com. The storied publisher, which has worked with Lucasfilm on a variety of titles from Dark Empire in 1991 to The Art of Star Wars Rebels in 2020, has announced a new line of all ages comics and graphic novels expanding the Star Wars galaxy like never before. Beginning in the spring of 2022, experience adventures in every era from the High Republic through the rise of the First Order, with new and exciting stories produced in collaboration with Lucasfilm and Disney Worldwide Publishing. The idea is to build up a Star Wars program that includes an ongoing series as well as an anthology, says Mike Richardson, Dark Horse Comics founder and CEO. Mixed in would be one-shots and specials. We'll see where we go from there. Initially, we will focus on stories featuring the High Republic.
Huh.
So if you're an old school Star Wars comics fan, of course, you know Dark Horse. They started publishing the comics, as it says in the story, back in 1991 with Dark Empire. And they had the exclusive license, or the primary Star Wars license, from 1991 until 2014. In 2015, of course, Marvel took over because, Disney owned Star Wars, Disney owned Marvel, and the Dark Horse comic book license was up anyways. So it was that shift happened there. So they ran the show with Star Wars comics, with everything from the Republic series through the Empire stuff, and there's all sorts of X-wing books and tons of stuff, including the Legacy comics as well. So really a big thing. And when the comics license shifted to Marvel in 2015, it was kind of a bittersweet moment.
Yeah,
because it was an exciting sort of new beginning. It was part of the big canon reset and all that stuff. But at the same time, Dark Horse had been the stewards of Star Wars storytelling and comics for so long, and they had done such great work over the years that it was kind of sad to see that partnership coming to an end. And I remember they were putting advertisements in those final Star Wars books that were just sort of a little tip of the cap to the fans, and it was something like, from the dawn of Jedi to the rise of the Empire, we've left a legacy. And there are all these different Star Wars titles put in the thing there. And I remember seeing that ad, and it was just like, oh man, Dark Horse, gonna miss ya.
Well, I remember like right before that, maybe 2013, 2012, they had recently restart like one of their comic runs, and they had started with like Star Wars #1. We're doing the After a New Hope like saga, and we're gonna start over and do Star Wars #1. I remember buying that. I remember looking around and buying that and going like out of my way to own that, because I'm like, oh, this is a new beginning for Star Wars comics. I can finally jump in and start reading some Dark Horse comics. And growing up, I don't know if I really knew about the Marvel Comics history, but if you knew about Star Wars comics, Dark Horse was the big thing. That's what they, before I even knew what all this comic publishing thing was. I knew Dark Horse comics, so that was a big deal. And then it got canceled not long after that, and then Marvel did the exact same thing. But Star Wars #1, we're doing the whole thing, and After a New Hope, and it was bittersweet. But it's great that they're back, and I think it's great to let other people do it. Just like we have the books, there's several different publishers. You don't just have Del Rey, you have Penguin, whatever else that's doing the books right now. So giving more people, just like with the video games. Now we're seemingly getting out of this EA exclusive era. We might not actually start getting some Star Wars video games for a change. Now this more Star Wars comics. That's great.
Yeah, I think that the continuity with the Marvel stuff recently has been pretty good. Like the tying stories into films and having character crossover, and that's been really good. Unfortunately, that's not what has brought me into comics. For me, it's I get enough of those characters on the screen. So I really like things that are just off the wall, really different. Almost like Star Wars Visions, but in comics. And that's what I really liked about Dark Horse, is how they weren't afraid to have series that were tentpoled by all these different characters that were made by the writers and designed by the artists. And they came up with some just amazing character designs. I mean, to the point where George Lucas was putting those characters in his films. Like Aayla Secura came from Dark Horse. And then they did such a great job of expanding on a lot of kind of lesser known obscure characters from the prequels, like Quinlan Vos and Aurra Sing became massive characters in the prequel era of Dark Horse. And those are some of my favorite comics. And then, as you mentioned, the Legacy series was very innovative, taking something way into the future and the distant descendant of Skywalker and everything. I think just everything with Dark Horse was really well. I mean, Jan Dursmer and John Ostrander are my favorite people from Dark Horse, and I don't know if they've done anything with Marvel Star Wars or not but it would be great to see if they are still active, if they come back now that it's that Dark Horse is doing stuff too, because everything they put out I absolutely loved.
John Ostrander's gone all Hollywood these days with his cameos and Suicide Squad. And
that's right.
Stuff like that.
That's right.
I think what was really interesting about the Dark Horse era is that they got the license in a time when, Star Wars wasn't really around. It was the same sort of heir to the Empire era, where they weren't making new Star Wars movies, or the new Star Wars movies that they were making were really far off, and so they were able to experiment a little bit more because Star Wars, was still a big thing, but it was a little bit niche. It was a little bit more niche. There wasn't an expectation of somebody's going to go to the theater, see a new movie, and then immediately walk into the comic book shop and buy Star Wars #1 and want to start reading more stories, or more accurately now, download the Marvel app and download Star Wars #1 and start reading on their iPad. And so they were able to do that, and they kept that spirit going through everything they did, whether it was Tales of the Jedi or Legacy, or some of the things they were doing at the end with Dawn of the Jedi, and all sorts of really good stuff. And when they brought right towards the end of their run, they had brought back the Legacy comics, and they were following a new character. And I was really excited because I had missed Legacy, and I loved the initial 50 some odd issues of it. And I was really excited for this new character and another look at that era. And then they announced that, they were losing the license. So they had to really wrap things up very, very quickly. And the last couple of pages of the last book are like, wow, we're really just trying to put as fine a point on this as we can, even though clearly there was more planned for this stuff. And so they had this incredible freedom, whereas Marvel took over and they jumped back in with Luke, Han, and Leia, obviously, understandably so. Darth Vader, they're doing all of that stuff, and I think that's what was expected, what was wanted, but they haven't ventured out quite as wild as Dark Horse did, and in part that's because I don't think they've probably been allowed to. Dark Horse was able to do this because nobody was doing stuff 5,000 years before A New Hope, or 100 some odd years after Return of the Jedi. Nobody was doing that. There were no plans to do any of that, and they weren't saving it for when a filmmaker would come along with the perfect idea. To be fair to Marvel, they have done some wild and crazy things with the Dr. Aphra character in the Dr. Aphra series. That's where they've been putting their real stamp on the Star Wars universe, outside of previously established characters, outside of doing crossovers with stuff. It's when you dip into the Dr. Aphra books, that's where you see that spirit of Dark Horse living on, and the spirit of what they started. And I don't know what the new age of Dark Horse comics is going to be. I doubt they'll have the same freedom that they did back in the day. But it'll just be fun to see them back, to have them back involved. And they're starting with the High Republic. So, that's an era that's maybe a little bit more free. Maybe there's a little bit more stuff that can be done there, as long as it's not interfering too much with the main storyline that's going on and the other stuff. So it's exciting news. And hopefully, what you want is the different publishers to work together, but also to challenge each other, so that they're, they recognize that they're still on the same team, that they're still, on Team Star Wars, but they're challenging each other to be better and push their stories into newer and crazier and more exciting directions.
Yeah.
And I think Dark Horse can do that.
Heck yeah.
All right. Let's talk about this real lightsaber that supposedly exists.
Lightsaber.
What have we got? This was if you guys remember back on May 4th, I think it was May 4th this year, they showed the quote unquote real lightsaber that they were going to have at the Disneyland parks, or the Disney parks, specifically for Galactic Star Cruiser. And apparently there's been some events that have been going on at the Galactic Star Cruiser where some people have gotten a sneak peek at it, and word out of there is that it's for display only. You can't actually pick it up and swing it around.
It's for the actors.
Yeah. And then Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, like, didn't they look in the patent? Somebody look in the patent and they realized it's not for sale. It's just for display purposes.
Yeah, there's a couple people reporting on this. And there was a few people that got like some like they're like testing it out now. They're like slowly like soft like opening it and letting people go in and look in it. I think I saw pictures of like people like Amy Radcliffe and Ashley Eckstein were like taking pictures in front of like, hey, look where I am. And like, okay, yeah, they're getting in like the well-known people that have connections that like, oh, hey, see how this is. And also, if you like it, go talk about it and build hype for this. And people that have been there like, oh yeah, it's not for sale. You're not going to see a real lightsaber in the gift shop, although there is a boutique apparently somewhere in this thing.
Of course there is. Of course there is. There wasn't going to be a Disney Star Wars experience in the real world without a gift shop. Of course there's going to be a gift shop. How is that? How is anybody surprised by that?
Disney designs each their rides to dump you in the gift shop when you get off the ride. It's not a coincidence, guys. You get into Tatooine. You can't physically get on Star Tours and not go through Tatooine traders. It's just impossible.
Yep.
But apparently this real lightsaber is like just for like Rey and Kylo Ren. You're not able to touch it or whatever. When you do like the lightsaber training, apparently you will get like a static lightsaber with a static blade that just turns on and off like what I have.
I'm paying like $5,000 to go on this thing.
So like when you see like Rey, the video of the Rey cast member that they have that they released on May the 4th, I think was her. She kind of takes the blade, she kind of like very carefully puts it up and it ignites, and you're like, she's trying to be very careful not to break that thing. Like you can tell it's kind of fragile. And I think they're not ready for kids to just pick up and go, boom, boom, boom. They're not ready for that. So I think it maybe needs more testing. I wouldn't rule it out that they're going to like, if they can perfect this, they're going to like, you're going to see this in Walmart in 10 years, but maybe not now.
For less than $5,000 too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of time, right? Like they're going to roll this thing out slowly. They want kind of the legend of it to build a little bit, the myth of it to build. Because like even just think about how we've learned about it so far. The first we heard of it was there was some Zoom call press conference for Disney Parks bloggers or something that just ended with the top dude over there reaching under his desk, pulling this thing out, turning it on, turning it off, and putting it away. So people were just talking about this thing that nobody had seen, that we just heard about, that, a very limited number of people had seen. And that was in the lead up to May 4th. And then on May 4th, the video that you're talking about, Ben, comes out. And now, we're hearing more and more about it. We're going to hear about it as Galactic Star Cruiser opens. People are going to go and see it, and they're going to say, wow, it's real. And you can look at it, and it's in the case, or there's a very specific place where people can use it. It's going to be really cool. And then slowly it'll start to be integrated into more and more stuff. And, it won't just be in certain areas of Galactic Star Cruiser, but there'll be characters walking around all the time who have it and can whip it out at any point. And so you're like, hey, look at this real lightsaber. And then it'll be in the parks, and you'll be able to go and have a photo op with somebody who's actually holding it. And then there'll be a story about how in one scene in season 6 of The Mandalorian, they actually used a real one on set for a couple of takes, and then it's in the show. And then, and then they'll start selling them at Doc Ondar's and at Galaxy's Edge for, $10,000, and eventually, it'll. And they'll get everybody who has that kind of money to burn on that kind of thing, and then they'll slowly, make it so that it's more and more accessible to it. But it's only a matter of time, but they're playing the long game on this.
I understand why the need for this, even if it is just for the parks and just for the actors to use. I understand the need for like having a real looking lightsaber, because you don't want like to be on the Star Cruiser and be like, oh, look, Rey, it's Kylo Ren. And he's like standing there real menacingly, and Rey's just like grabs one of those plastic ones, like flicks it out. It doesn't quite come out. So she's like, come pull it out. And then, she finally gets it, and boom, and it's, it's there.
Or they've got one of the light up ones, like a Force Effects one, but the batteries die. And they're in the middle of like a lightsaber battle, and it just goes.
But it's gonna be freaking cool to like, if like Rey is there and like she just walks up to you and like, oh, hey, here's my lightsaber, and just like takes it off her belt and just sparks it up, and it's a lightsaber. It looks real. Like, that's gonna be cool. Like, yeah, I want to hold the freaking thing, but it's this sounds cool enough.
Yeah. I genuinely, like, I think in part, the technology is new. They're still learning it, so probably part of this is it just can't be used as freely as we want it to be. but over time it's going to be perfected. It's going to be worked on. It's going to be improved, and eventually it'll be where everybody wants it to be, where you'll be able to have an actual lightsaber that lights up properly, but that will also do no harm. So if you swing it over your arm, you're not going to chop it off.
Because if you give this to a kid, the first thing they're going to do is go after their friend or their cousin or their brother, and they're going to whack them in the head with it. That's what they're going to do.
Oh, yeah.
You have to kid-proof this thing.
Oh, yeah. First thing I'm doing is swinging this at Ben's head just to see if it stays
This
off.
doesn't actually just forget the kid thing. Like anybody will just whack their significant other with it. Like it's going to be a mess.
Yeah. In a fun way. Let's make sure we make that clear. Everybody's swinging this at each other in a fun way. It's exciting. It's an exciting thing. So Galactic Star Cruiser is opening up, I guess, next year, I think, or is it?
I think so.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll hear more about this, and the legend and the myth of the real lightsaber will build and grow some more. All right, let's talk about a couple of collecting things really quickly. Lego has unveiled their new Ultimate Collector's Series AT-AT, which costs a measly $800. $800, $700.99. It'll be available November 26th, so just in a little while, and 6,785 pieces.
Apparently, the most expensive Lego set ever.
Really? More so than even the Falcon?
I mean, I didn't buy that thing, so don't ask me.
Yeah, this thing looks gorgeous. It's massive. Like it belongs in the same sort of conversation as the Falcon, if nothing else.
Wow.
Like
I like that it's minifigure scale, that it's got all the minifigures in it. You can open it up and you can see inside. The little speeder bikes are in the back of it, which is like, that's a nice detail because that's in the original incredible cross sections from like 20 years ago. I appreciate them putting that in there. So they're being faithful. And just some other really cool details. And, it looks gorgeous.
It does. It really, really does. I'm trying to find out how much the Millennium Falcon costs. Hold on. Millennium Falcon's still more expensive, although
really?
that might be Canadian prices. How much? Millennium Falcon is 900 Canadian. How much is this thing? Well, that's 800. I think I'm assuming American. So it's probably more expensive. Yeah, so I'm gonna say it's more expensive.
We're almost there to that $1,000 Lego item. We're getting close.
It's coming down the pipe. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna happen. It'll be something from the. There'll be something for the original trilogy.
We know we're screwed when all the North American countries have a $1,000 bill. Then we're like, okay. So now we're just going to be dropping a grand at the Lego store now whenever we go there.
maybe the next X-Wing, maybe the next Ultimate Collector Series X-Wing, or like the next R2
X-Wing.
Yeah,
I
make
better
it
be
really big.
I better be able to get in that thing if the X-Wing's a grand.
Or maybe what about a life-size R2?
Okay, yeah, I'm down for that, and then that would probably be well over $1,000.
I'm thinking more like a beach ball size, like Death Star. That's like $2,000.
Oh,
yeah, they have not done an Ultimate Collector Series Death Star since the second Death Star thing that they made a while ago. And that thing is worth a lot on the secondary market apparently. So
imagine.
So I think that's it, Ben. I think that's it. I mean the regular Death Star is $500 to begin with, and that's
you have like the little one that's got like all the play sits inside. I can imagine like them blowing that up and like you can just like take a panel off and it's like there's stuff inside. Like
you would have to have the exterior of it as well as the interior. Oh. I'm hyping myself up for something that doesn't exist.
I don't have the money or the space for that thing.
Me neither. Me neither. But
I could sell all of this and still not have enough money. Or space.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got for collecting. The first HasLab Rancor stretch goal has been revealed. It's a 6-inch scale Gamorrean guard on. What packaging is that? That's like Power of the Force.
Oh, it says Power of the Force.
Power of the Force packaging.
Even though it's Black Series. 6-inch, I believe.
6-inch scale, and that's when they reach 11,000 backers. Now, I'm not sure, but there might have been another one actually revealed since then.
Really?
I'm just having a look right now, see if they've unveiled what else they've got.
The Gamorrean makes sense. I'm trying to figure out what else.
Tier 2. So, this is exciting. For at 13,500 backers, the Rancor will come with a whole bunch of bones and skeletons and skulls that are to scale with this thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get that. Okay. I'm speculating here. You got the Gamorrean. What's the next thing? I'm thinking like giant gate that can come down on his head.
Oh no.
That's what I'm thinking.
The next thing is Malakili.
Oh,
it's got to be the Rancor keeper.
Gotta be.
Yeah. The thing after that can be the gates, but
and then I want Ula.
Ula, yeah, in the 6-inch scale.
Or a Luke with the bone. There may already be a figure with that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a Jabba's Palace Luke, but maybe in that
not
pack
a 6-inch.
Yeah, in that pack of bones, maybe they should make the Jabba's Palace Luke for the main line, but make the bone like part of the
that makes
part
sense.
of one of the packs there.
Yeah.
So that's what we got there, and then
a bunch of free ideas for you, Hasbro.
And then on the Bring Home the Bounty for this week, because we're still doing that apparently. I guess I'll share the screen. Give me a second here, and we'll have a quick look-see at what we got.
What we got this?
Yeah, what we got this
Bring
week.
home the bounty this week.
Bring home the bounty. All right, let's see what we got here. Galactic Star Cruiser sweepstakes. Ooh. One lucky winner will win the grand prize of a chance to go on the first a test voyage of Galactic Star Cruiser in March.
Screw you guys! I'm getting this.
March 2022. Yeah. How do I enter this? How do I enter that? Let's see. We got a Lego AT-ST from Hoth. That's pretty cool. Some more jewelry from Pandora with some Mandalorian stuff. There's a helmet and a Grogu. That looks good. Mandalorian custom 3-tin gift set by the Republic of Tea. So I guess if you like tea, you'll want these. One of them is a Luke Skywalker, Grogu, and R2.
At first. Which I would actually buy.
Now see, I'd be into that. Smell like a Mandalorian.
What does Bo-Katan smell like? I'm curious.
I want to know what Grogu smells like.
Wait, what?
Then we've got Beskar ingot drives by Seagate. That's actually pretty cool.
That's actually really cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. I might
That
get
is
one
cool.
of those.
Yeah. So there you go. That's your Bring Home the Bounty update for this week.
We know you guys were waiting for that.
Yeah. Everybody was on it.
Yeah.
I mean, we skipped it last week because we had all the other news, and I think we skipped it the week before because we had the Hasbro interview.
People were so mad.
We're a little bit behind. Yeah.
Accidentally skipped it.
Yeah. All right, let's do something we haven't done for a little while, and let's close out the show with a little listener feedback. So, as always, if you want to send in an email to us here at the Star Wars Underworld, you can send it to swunderworld@gmail.com. Again, swunderworld@gmail.com. As Chris said, that's our 10-year-old email address. And we love reading what you send us, and we love chatting about it on the show. So this one comes up. This first one comes from Hugh. Hugh writes, "Hello there. Long time no speak and plenty of high ground. I've been watching the YouTube version of the podcast, and I think you've all been settling in really well with the video format. It's great to see, as well as hear your reaction to the news and shenanigans that are presented, along with Governor Ben and his top hat magic in full swing." We haven't had a visit from Sir Benjamin, the Star Wars gentleman. In a little
reach
while.
the hat. I'm sorry, I can't. It's
Okay,
over there.
Maybe next week. Back to Hugh. Hugh says, "My question in this email is this. If you were to create your own Star Wars story for Lucasfilm, what would it be and where in the Star Wars timeline would you set it?" That's kind of relevant to what we were talking about earlier. As of writing this email, I've just finished watching Lop and Ocho and the Twins for the first time, and they've increased my aspirations to have a story set after the Rise of Skywalker, providing I don't choke on my aspirations. The cloning themes in The Bad Batch have had me hypothesizing about what if Emperor Palpatine had left behind a twisted legacy after his death. This would have been in the form of laboratories, weapons, and other technologies that were either forgotten or hidden away. Remnants of the First Order and any sympathizers would try to hijack those technologies in a desperate attempt to survive against the Resistance and in a newly formed government of some kind after the Battle of Exegol. Taking inspiration from the X-Wing book, The Krytos Trap, I'd give one of those hidden technology caches a failsafe, and it would be captured by the Resistance or otherwise. Instead of a virus, though, it would be in the form of a resurrected and cloned Geonosian brainworm whose DNA was secretly taken and stored long before the sterilization of Geonosis happened. This, to me, fits in with the Palpatine logic, especially in the new canon, where if something is broke, you destroy and rebuild. Besides, Palpatine is a narcissistic space wizard who loves democracy. So who knows what other evil ideas he'd have implemented. On a side note, Lop and Ocho and the Twins were both great watches. I'll leave you with this hashtag Lop for canon. Need I say more? Best wishes, Hugh. P.S. Dominic, I cannot believe that you were a butterfly slayer many a years ago, as mentioned on the November 13th episode. I did not. I've never actually harmed a butterfly. That was just an example. I swear. I swear.
God.
All right. What would be your Star Wars story? Where would you set it in the timeline? Whoever wants to go first can go.
I agree about the sequel era. Like I think that there needs to be more stories there. So I mean, I would do a story that's branching off of characters from the sequel films. And really any of them I think would be great, but specifically Finn. Like, I guess if I had to choose one, I would say a Finn series would be my choice.
Okay.
I've actually had this idea of like, because we had the Finn series kind of bandied about recently about like, okay, maybe this could be something that's happening. You know, maybe Boyega's coming back. I like the idea of like, Finn. I feel like, yes, there's the whole controversy. Yes, he was underutilized. I think getting more into his character and kind of getting more into like his backstory as a stormtrooper. I love the idea of like picking up where Rise of Skywalker left off and like they're cleaning up, trying to get rid of the last remnants of the First Order. Like there's some First Order remnant and he has to go in like undercover to like infiltrate this place. And you could kind of like, you could tell it in a way that's like getting more of his backstory, gangs and like maybe they don't know he's Finn, the Resistance general. Maybe it's a situation like we had with the Last Jedi deleted scene where they're like, oh yeah, I remember you, FN 287. You're that guy we look up to. I like that idea of like getting more into his psyche and like, and being able to utilize, which something I thought lacked in Rise of Skywalker was like, utilizing like him being a former stormtrooper. What does that mean? Giving him another chance to like do that. Anything after Rise of Skywalker, I'm very much as I love everything's going on, and Star Wars has always been about jumping back and forwards or whatever, like going forward with the story. And that's why I'm really hoping Rogue Squadron, if it happens, is a movie that's set, post Rise of Skywalker. And I'm not even hoping that movie deals with Rey, Finn, Poe, all these characters. I kind of hope they're, not in that thing. It's about new characters, but it can still be about that era and about like what's going on afterwards. How does the galaxy pick up after that? How do you, how are they dealing with, the whole idea, and how are they trying to prevent what happened from happening again? How do you prevent the First Order from doing the same thing the Empire did, becoming the First Order? It's a very, very, I think, fertile area for storytelling, and I hope sooner rather than later we can get that. And I'll put myself out there. I have no credentials whatsoever, never written a script in my life, but hey, I'll give myself a shot. I'll put myself out there. Lucasfilm, call me.
Yeah. Call us maybe. I love that we've had basically two pitches for Finn movies or stories. I love it. I want to see that too. I'd love to see some more Finn stories out there, especially with John coming back. For me, we were talking about Dark Horse Comics and we're talking about the Legacy comics, and I've been thinking about the Legacy comics a lot lately. I think I'm going to do a reread of all of those, and I've been thinking about them a lot in the context of Star Wars Visions and some of those stories that were told in there, especially the Ninth Jedi. And I've also been reading the novel Star Wars Ronin, which is based on the duel episode of Visions. And what I'd really like to see is a version of the Star Wars galaxy that we haven't seen before. And so I want to go into the distant future, like minimum 200 years in the future, if not more. I want to see a completely different galaxy. I don't want to see a galaxy that's dealing with, the repercussions of the Clone War or the repercussions of the Empire or the repercussions of the First Order. I want to leave all that aside. I want to start somewhere fresh with new characters in a new time period with new conflicts. And as you tell that story, you slowly tease out the connections to the older stuff. And that could be in the form of, Force Ghosts. You could have Luke or Rey or whoever come back in that form. Or it can just be in the fact that some of the characters might have heard those legends, the legends of Luke Skywalker, of Anakin Skywalker, of Obi-Wan Kenobi, of Rey Skywalker, of Leia Organa, of Padme Amidala, of Finn, of Poe Dameron, yada, 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 on and on like that. And I'd love to see that version of Star Wars, that take on Star Wars, and go further and not be handcuffed by continuity, not be handcuffed by expectations that come with being a direct sequel to something else that came out, and just doing something new and interesting in Star Wars that picks up on the themes and has some connection but isn't reliant on those connections. And that's kind of what I'd like to see. And I would consider calling it episode 10. I would also consider calling it something else. I don't know. But
episode 100.
Episode 100. Just
and then work your way up there.
Yeah. or jumping ahead and being like, this is episode 21, and just leave there be 11 other movies that could be made in between. So I'll just throw that out there. That's what I'd like to see.
That's awesome.
There we go. All right. Hope that answers your question, Hugh. Thank you very much for that email. It was a very, very fun thought experiment. Next one comes from Joel. Joel writes, "Hello, Dominic and pals." That is, of course, the correct way to begin all emails. This is a follow-up email to how the Mandoverse could possibly end. Again, we're building off of something we were talking about earlier. We did not plan it this way. Joel says, "I really like Dominic's approach with Dr. Pershing going to Exegol after the defeat of Thrawn. However, I sort of want to tweak his idea a bit based on some more speculation I have regarding how I think the universe of the Mandoverse status quo is set up at the time. So without further ado, here we go. First and foremost, I don't think Thrawn and Palpatine are working together in any way. I think Thrawn thinks that Palpatine died on Endor. I also think Gideon thinks this as well, and that Thrawn and Gideon are independent Imperial remnants not connected to either Palpatine or Exegol, or even the forces that would become the First Order, being led by Snoke and possibly Rey Sloane and Brendel Hux, aka Hux Sr. at this time. But that Thrawn and Gideon are mostly doing their own thing to restore the Empire in their own way that has nothing to do with the Emperor or his plans. I have always preferred the idea that Thrawn is operating independently, much like he was in the Heir to the Empire, where ironically, in Legends during his campaign, Palpatine in a clone body was on a hidden world, this one called Biss, watching everything from afar, and in secret, he did not approach Thrawn. My speculation is that Gideon and Thrawn could be allies using whatever technology Palpatine left behind for evil cloning machinations and wanting to restore the Empire with them on the top. Although most likely, Thrawn will want to be on top and will betray Gideon later on down the line. I also suspect much of the good or advanced cloning material went to Exegol a long time ago, since according to the lore, Palpatine has had this facility on Exegol set up for quite some time before Return of the Jedi, and what Gideon, Pershing, and Thrawn are using is just the scraps.
Yeah.
I prefer this because I like the idea that the holdouts that we see in the known galaxy are really just that, holdouts. All the good stuff went to the unknown regions a while back, and anyone still operating in the known galaxy are just working with what little is left. Thrawn may be the exception to that rule, but I think that if Thrawn is operating in the unknown regions, he is doing so independently on his own accord. I speculate that with the events surrounding Grogu, that perhaps Gideon and Thrawn stumbled across something that even Palpatine and his Sith Eternal cultists could not have foreseen, and thus Palpatine is watching events play out carefully since he probably did not reach out to Thrawn, for he does not trust Thrawn, as I think in a post-Endor world, Palpatine and Thrawn's interests no longer completely align. Since we know that Palpatine and the Sith Eternal followers were still trying to sustain him, Grogu was the missing link that they needed, but unfortunately got into hands not linked to the Emperor. Now here's where Dominic's speculation ending comes into play, but with a twist. I predicted we will get our Return of the Jedi ending, Din on the throne of Mandalore, Ezra back with the gang, and maybe someone died like Bo-Katan because she got power hungry, and we're all celebrating on Mandalore and having an all-around good time. But we cut to Dr. Pershing, who, surviving the series, sneaks his way out, trying to escape somewhere safe, only to be approached by a few people in black robes, these people being, of course, the Sith Eternal, telling him that they may require his knowledge on a little-known world called Exegol, thus giving our connection to the sequel era and the next major chapter in Star Wars history. Cut to a scene of Dr. Pershing looking horrified, knowing that he is about to get involved with forces beyond his comprehension. So that's basically more or less the same ending that Dominic had in mind, just with a bit more context as to how the various Imperial factions are operating at this time. I like the idea that not every Imperial faction we see is connected to Palpatine, but that Palpatine has always had his black-boned fingers everywhere, wanting to intervene on his behalf in order to ensure that everything will proceed as he has foreseen. So, what do you think of my revised ending to Dominic's speculation? Do you think Thrawn should be an independent villain who is not directly linked to Palpatine? Do you think Gideon and Thrawn are working together? How many villain factions exist in the post-Endor era? Love the show as always, Joel.
I think that Gideon's gonna have to get tied into either Thrawn or Palpatine at some point, and I think Thrawn makes more sense, and that again fits more with where Thrawn's at in Legends, where there isn't any Palpatine in that particular storyline. So Thrawn is the Emperor essentially. He's replaced him in that sense. So I think it makes sense to just pull from that. But ultimately, I want to see Thrawn be his own guy. I don't want to see him doing Palpatine's bidding. I want him to be the tops for a bit.
I agree. I don't think Thrawn and Gideon are working together.
Fascinating.
I think Gideon is working for Palpatine. I'll tell you.
That could be interesting.
I'll tell you why. It's because of season 2 of The Mandalorian, and there's two things. One is the Snoke in a jars. Those are Snokes in jars in episode 4. I think that's definitely what's going on there. And in the finale, and this is kind of overlooked because everybody was freaking out so much about Luke Skywalker, but there's a moment where Gideon is talking to Din about Grogu. And he talks about how important and how powerful Grogu's blood could be. And he specifically says that his blood could have the power or could unlock the power to restore order to the galaxy. And the way Giancarlo Esposito puts the mustard on the word order really, to me, suggests that everybody involved in making that scene knew they were doing a little tease for the First Order. They were doing a little tease, or for the Final Order, even that they know that's out there, and they are going to tie in with that some way, somehow. And so I think that's what's going on with Gideon, and I think Gideon's going to be in a really fascinating place when we pick up in season 3, because he's been captured by the New Republic. I hope we get to see his interrogation by the New Republic. Obviously, the person who would have been the clear choice to interrogate him is not going to be around. And speaking of which, I've rewatched some episodes from season 2 of Mandalorian recently. They need to recast Cara Dune. They were setting up some real interesting stuff with her, and they need to recast that character so they can pick up on those storylines. I'm sorry. Like I understand the whole, it breaks the reality of the world and blah 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 blah. But they got to continue that story without Gina Carano. They gotta pick up on those threads. That's too interesting to be left to have it end because the actor was a moron.
I think they should do Rangers. They should bring Rangers of the New Republic back as an animated series. Then I think the recasting will be easier because it'll just be voice.
Yeah, do it however you want. But it'll be fascinating to see what role Gideon might play in season 3 because he is the guy with the connection to Palpatine, and even Carson Teva, Paul Sun-Hyun Lee's character was kind of teasing that he suspected there was more going on out there in the Outer Rim, and it could be Thrawn, it could be the Emperor, it could be something else. So I don't think Moff Gideon and Grand Admiral Thrawn are related. I think they're two kind of separate villains. I think, in a sense, they're kind of distractions from each other. I think Thrawn is the more immediate threat, and thus Gideon is a distraction from him. But Palpatine is the larger eventual threat, and thus Thrawn is a distraction from him. So they're in a kind of a weird sort of way. They're distracting the main characters from each other. I think when Thrawn comes into the story, he won't be an Imperial leader. He'll be leading some sort of Chiss army. That's what I'm thinking. I don't think I don't think he'll have stormtroopers or anything like that. I think he will be picking up. He'll be acting as an ambassador or a leader of the Chiss ascendancy, not as an Imperial. And maybe he'll eventually get some Imperials under his control because there'll probably be a power vacuum with Moff Gideon now in New Republic custody. But I don't think that's where he's going to start from. And if you look in that episode, the Ahsoka episode, all the Thrawn stuff that's in that episode, none of it has anything to do with the Empire. Not the character, not the magistrate, not his droids, nothing. There's nary a stormtrooper in sight in the episode The Jedi. So
I do really like the idea of like establishing that Gideon's over here, Thrawn's over here. They're doing their own separate things, but bringing them together, I think, like they're naturally going to be like, okay, well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We got these Mandalorians all here screwing up each other's stuff. Like, obviously, we're going to work together, but they're not going to get along. I would compare it to like Pre Vizsla and Maul in the Clone Wars. Like they kind of like get together because like, oh, we have this mutual enemy. You want to kill Kenobi? I want to kill Kenobi. Let's do it. And they like get together and they're BFFs for a little bit until the power gets to their head, as they do with villains in the Star Wars universe, whether they be Sith or Mandalorian or Imperial. That power is going to ultimately corrupt, and Gideon's going to want to try to take out Thrawn. Thrawn's going to want to take out Gideon, and that's could ultimately lead to one or both of their downfalls. Is the idea of them turning on each other? I think that's really interesting. I love the idea of like, okay, Thrawn is not with the Empire anymore. Maybe he's off. He's separated himself. Whatever happened to him and Ezra, they're off and he went back to the Chiss ascendancy or whatever else. And, he has his own machinations. He may be manipulating the Empire, but as we've seen in the books, he's not really loyal to the Empire. He's just kind of using the Empire as a means to an end. So when it comes down to it, he doesn't really care about the Empire. He's going to use them. He'll like, hey, I was a Grand Admiral once. Y'all should listen to me. I don't think he would actually say y'all.
No, he should. He should. I want to hear Lars Mikkelsen come into a scene and be like, I'm here to take over the Empire. Y'all should listen to me. I was a Grand Admiral.
Yeah, exactly. Take notes, Filoni. But just there's so many possibilities here. I'm very like, I didn't like, obviously Moff Gideon, the cloning stuff, that's like a given. That seems like the obvious choice. But like throwing Thrawn into the mix, like that threw me for the loop. I think it threw everyone for a loop. But like, now that we're like, okay, this is happening, like, what are they going to do with this? Like, I never expected we would be talking about this, like, as a real thing.
Yeah. I can't wait for Mando season 3 to pick up on some of this stuff. I hope that Book of Boba has some teases for what's to come, because I'm it's been a year since season 2 came out. Like we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of Luke Skywalker making his grand entrance there, and I want to know more. I'm curious where this story is going, and
I will make a prediction, and as all my predictions go, they don't mean squat. But I will say that we will get a post-credit scene in an upcoming series that to next year, and it will have Lars Mikkelsen as Thrawn.
Ooh, interesting.
Could be Book of Boba Fett. Could be. What if it was Kenobi? That'd be wild.
No,
But,
I mean, he's around at the time.
Yeah, he is. But yeah, I think Mandalorian season 3. Like, I don't think we're actually he's gonna be like a presence. I think we're gonna be dealing with Mandalorian stuff, or maybe he will show up. I think like by the end of the season, we'll be like, okay, we heard about Moff Gideon, then we saw him. Or we really didn't hear about him. He just kind of showed up at the end of season 1. Like, I think there was a progression. I think we'll find out. Like, Moff Gideon's not as big of a deal. Thrawn's the big deal. We've heard him talked about. And now we're going to actually see him.
Well, I think Moff Gideon felt like a big deal at the end of season 1 because he was a big deal to the characters, because the characters existed in relatively small worlds and relatively small galaxies. And now that they've been exposed to the larger galaxy, he's going to start to feel like small potatoes, and you're going to need Grand Admiral Thrawn coming in to be the bigger, more impactful threat in the long term.
And the fact that Moff Gideon is like ex-ISB, like they want to interrogate him, I think that may play into like, okay, this is a guy that knows a lot. Like if stuff starts happening and they have Moff Gideon in their custody, they're gonna be like, what's with this blue guy? What's he doing? Like, tell us.
Yeah. I do wonder if you mentioned a post-credit scene, Ben, but I do wonder if now the genie's out of the bottle on that, and the Star Wars shows at the very least are going to start having to have post-credit scenes now that they've done that with Book of Boba, and if everybody will tune in to the finale of Book of Boba expecting some kind of tease, and if there is one, I would suspect it will have to do with someone who is a bigger, more powerful villain out there reacting to the shakeup to the underworld that we'll likely be seeing over the course of Book of Boba Fett. And maybe that's Thrawn, maybe that's somebody else, maybe that's the character who will be the more immediate villain in Mando season 3. I don't know, because I'm not expecting Thrawn to play a major role until the Ahsoka show. I think he'll kind of be alluded to some more in season 3 of Mando, and maybe a little bit in Book of Boba, but really Ahsoka's where he'll make his grand entrance. And so, there's more build up to be done. There's more teasing and hinting at that I think we can look forward to in Book of Boba and beyond. But yeah, thank you very much for that email, Joel. As always, you can send in more emails. Anybody who wants to can send them in swunderworld@gmail.com. And if we like them, we'll read them out on the show, and we will discuss. And as you heard, we will go in depth on them. But I think with that, we will begin to wrap things up for this week.
All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching and listening to the show. If you're listening, please leave us a review. If you're watching, please smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. We are getting ever so close to 1,000 subscribers, so that would help us get our way there. We are not sure what the programming is going to be like next week, because it is American Thanksgiving next Thursday. So we're going to be talking about that, and there may or may not be a show next week, but stay tuned to our social media at the SWU, and we'll update everybody if we're planning to do anything special.
And subscribe here. You'll get a little ding on YouTube too.
Yeah,
we'll make an announcement on YouTube. So
if you hit the notification bell on YouTube and have push notifications on for YouTube app on your phone, then you'll know when we're live, no matter when it is. If it's in the middle of the night, you'll be woken up by a bing sound or whatever your notification sound is. It's better
Star Wars Underworld's live. Okay, all right.
Set it so that when YouTube gives a notification, you hear hello there. Like that would be perfect every time we go live. If they have your
That
phone,
is that is literally my text tone. Yeah. So perfect.
Beautiful. So at the SWU and of course search for the Star Wars Underworld and you'll find it on YouTube. Dominic, thank you so much for hosting tonight.
It was my pleasure as always. Great fun getting into everything here tonight. You know, it was a slow news week. Didn't have a ton to talk about, but as we always do, we found some interesting stuff to go on about. Whether it's the legacy of Kathleen Kennedy as president of Lucasfilm, or what the future holds for Kathleen Kennedy as president of Lucasfilm, or the publishing shakeups, and of course the great listener feedback is always a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to doing this again. I don't know if it'll be next week or if it'll be in 2 weeks, but we'll have some exciting stuff for you. I'm sure in the next week, even if it's not this necessarily. That may actually involve two of us being in the same physical space as opposed to floating around in our nebulous little squares.
This is when I reach out my hand and then it comes onto the other side.
Yeah. Not yet. That's next week. And, yeah, can't wait for that.
Yes, and follow at Dominic J25. I have a feeling there's going to be some adventures on the social media feeds coming up.
Oh yeah.
So make sure to do that. And you can follow me at Seek3PO. And Ben, thank you so much for hosting as well.
Oh, it was an absolute pleasure as always. We didn't think, we were literally talking before the show, oh, there's no news, we've got nothing to talk about, and 2.5 hours later, here we are. So we can always find a way to stretch it out a bit, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. And who knows what else? I mean, there probably won't be anything happen. If we didn't get anything on Disney Plus Day, then why are we gonna get anything any other day? But then again, they usually just randomly drop stuff for no reason. So I don't know, maybe some Thanksgiving presents. Maybe they'll force us to do a show next week because they'll drop like 3 trailers for no reason on a random Tuesday. But yeah, hey, I won't complain.
Yeah, but they should.
I forgot during the plugs. I did another podcast this week. I forgot thing, and it actually came out. It actually came out. I was gonna hold on to it. I'm like, oh yeah. Jesse Bennett, good friend of ours, the bringer of the top hat, as you guys know, he has another podcast called Question/Possible Answer, and basically they just talk about like movies and TV shows and like what if scenarios, like what happens, and we got together to talk about Solo: A Star Wars Story. Nice. And I quickly learning it's one of my favorite Star Wars movies, probably. And I had a lot of fun talking about it. You can search it up, Question/Possible Answer on your podcatchers. I think it's everywhere. It's on Anchor for sure. And they're at Question Possible Answer, just spelled out on Facebook too. And I think on Twitter, you can just search them up. So yeah, definitely great little discussion. It was a lot of fun. Thanks, Jesse, for having me on, and talk to you guys next week.
Fantastic. And of course, you can follow Ben on social media at Ben Hart with no E. Once again, our feedback line is swunderworld@gmail.com. You can support us financially over at patreon.com/theswu. We have stuff over there for as little as $1 a month. That's where you can get access to our pre-shows that we film live a half hour before our normal shows, and you can watch them after the fact as well on demand. Patreon.com/theswu, and there's lots of other surprises over there if you want to go check them out. And then finally, shout out to all the shows that we have on the Culture Slate Podcast Network. Make sure you head over to the Culture Slate YouTube channel. You get the links to all the other shows from there. So that's it for this week. We'll be back soon. Until then, for Ben and Dominic, my name is Chris, and may the Force be with you.
It's a wrap.